Welcome back, minors. My name is Tracy Kriegel, and I'm a counselor here at Student Wellbeing.
Hey, and my name's Amber Johnston, and I'm also a counselor at Student Wellbeing. And it's time for your morning cup of joe. Is it the coffee, like coffee machine?
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Percolator or...
Percolator. So we often talk about social media and how it affects our mental health. So this week, I want to kind of tackle a piece of that and talk about body image.
Nice. That's a very important topic for a lot of people.
Yes. And there's a lot of struggles around it and a lot of stigma about people that struggle with it. So I want to emphasize you're not alone, and talk about the different kinds of struggles that individuals may have with body image and what that kind of looks like.
Good. That's important.
So in right now we're at kind of an interesting time frame where most of what we see on social media is photoshopped. And so we face a lot of people that present themselves as being everyday people when in reality it's very heavily filtered. It's pieces are cut off of it. It's very, very not reflective of what reality really looks like. And then it becomes really hard because we look at our own pictures and we look at our own self in the mirror and it doesn't look the same. Mm-hmm. Because we're comparing our real life bodies and our real life faces to those of impossible standards that are unrealistic and often not even something that's physically possible.
Right.
Like, how often do we see that on some of these pictures? You're like, where are your intestines?
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of these pictures are just not realistic at all.
Right.
And it's basically we're comparing our physical self to somebody else's fantasy of what they wish that they look like.
Yeah. We see that so often. I mean, I like to do photography, and so when you take photos of people, they're like, can you crop this out? Can you crop that out? Can you put a filter on this? Can you put a filter on that? And you turn to Facebook, and 90% of the people on Facebook, no longer do you see their face. All you see is this white little filter over their faces. And we should have no filter Fridays.
Right.
Because I love to see natural, and I think natural beauty is just so much prettier than filter faces.
Absolutely.
Because I think the natural beauty that's what I look for when I take my photos, is capturing a natural person's beauty and highlighting that versus putting so many filters. Because you can go to Lightroom and you can go to Photoshop, and you can highlight people's natural beauty within those contexts of those, editing rooms. But all the filters and stuff that you put on those things just from the context of photoshopping, doesn't really highlight the natural beauty of the person when you can actually look at what's behind the beauty of the person. It's looking for the right photo at the right time, the right lighting.
Well, and often our beauty lies in what we would perceive as imperfections, because those are what makes us different. That's what sets us apart. And so even if you look in some of the most famous models of let's go to the height period of supermodels and like the late 80s and early 90s. That was when supermodels, they dominated the runways. But when we look at all of them, all of the ones that were truly, truly famous had what we would deem as imperfections. They had gaps in their teeth, or there's Cindy Crawford and the mole. They all had little things about them that set them apart that otherwise we might feel self-conscious about, because it's technically what we would ourselves consider an imperfection, when in reality it's not an imperfection. It's just it's part of who we are, and it's a difference. It's something that enhances us.
Yeah, it's our beauty.
Yes,
absolutely. So and composition and how we look at those things really makes a difference, in how it appears, and so I think the angle that you look at something, the lighting you put something in, really, puts a different flair on things,
Right.
Versus having to cover it up and hide behind it. And unfortunately, media has taken a different spin on things, and they want us to hide behind or alter or change, when in perspective, we need to, just bring out the beauty and the light behind, what is really there for people,
Right.
instead of hiding behind. So. Yeah.
Well, and we've started to see recently, like talking about media, there's been a huge movement that started in the last couple of years, and that's the body positivity movement. And you're starting to see the first that I really noticed it was when Dove came out with their line of commercials, in which they really started kind of pushing forth. Like we would, when the Dove commercials came out, we were coming right off of that Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch era, where everything was just like very had to be almost cookie cutter perfect. And we then come into like the late 2000s, and moving into the 2000 teens, and you had that body positivity movement start rising up, and you had Dove. The first one I really saw was the Dove ad, in which they had all these different types of body types that were there, and that was huge. Like seeing that rise up and being able to hear. It felt brave. It felt brave for women to get on there and be, basically in their underwear after, all of these years of that, like I said, that Victoria's Secret, it was all over everything. And so now we have this movement that's saying, okay, you can be beautiful and be any size or any build, and it's okay.
Yeah. It's a huge difference, because used to you see all the Victoria's Secret models go down the runway, but now used to, when you got all your ads from Victoria's Secret, it was always the teeny tiny size 0 model, and now
Right.
your Victoria's Secret ads are not that way anymore. We have every size Victoria's Secret model, in the advertisement, which is good to see that we have different body types, that are present in our view. So if you are 2X, or if you're a size 0, you feel comfortable in your skin however you are, because you are who you are.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who you are,
Right.
because if you feel like you need to make a change, that's on you. I mean, that's up to you how you feel. If you feel like you're uncomfortable, then that's where you put a health and nutrition plan in place, but if you're comfortable where you are, that's what's important, and nobody should condemn you for you needing a change. If you have a mole on your face and you love your mole, love your mole, be you.
Right.
Or if you have a birthmark or a scar or a tattoo and you love it, be you. Be happy that you got it.
Yes.
Shine forth. I think those are those things. We have to be happy for what we have.
Right.
And if somebody body shames us, that's wrong.
Right.
So.
Well, and there's an artist that went around a while ago, and he's very, very body positivity, and like I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he produced this whole line where he's got it was not only individuals of different body types, all the way from extra 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 small all the way up to the extra 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 large. Like, it wasn't just that range there, but we're also talking individuals who have had amputations and have had physical disabilities and physical differences in their bodies, and creating a positivity and finding the beauty in that. And I can't even express how wonderful that is to me, to celebrate all of those beautiful body types and all of those beautiful people. But right now, like, there's still vestiges of that Victoria's Secret culture still running around.
Oh, yeah.
And we still see it. And we see people changing the angles, and they put themselves not only in these environments where they look the best from the best angle with the best filters and the best lighting, and they pose a certain way. Have you heard that you got to pose at a 45-degree angle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. like that's a whole thing. And to make sure that the photo is as flattering as possible. And then they turn around and they create an illusion with the objects in the photo, so it makes it look like they're on an airplane, or they're in Paris, or they're here, or they're there, to try to make the illusion that they're more well-traveled, richer, whatever than they really are. And it becomes, the whole thing becomes a lie. And studies show that the act of just taking a selfie in and of itself can decrease our satisfaction with our own appearance. So how do you think it makes you feel about yourself when everything that you just put in that selfie is illusion?
Not good.
Yeah.
It demeans yourself.
Right.
And your self-esteem goes, meow.
Well, I mean, you feel good for a moment because the picture looks good, but how do you feel when you look in the mirror and you don't look like that? That's the part that hurts. Because you won't look like that at every moment of your life, because that person doesn't exist.
Right.
And so regardless of whether we edit it or not, just the act of taking a selfie makes us feel bad, feel worse about ourselves, and less satisfied with how we look. And so the problem is we become focused on our flaws. We start noticing those tiny little things that we all have. I don't care who you are. You have tiny little imperfections in your appearance, and again, those can be assets, or they can be things that you nitpick on and obsess over.
You're talking about putting the constant filter on. It's almost like when I glance across social media and I see a constant filter, I tend to think, what's the mask? What is the reason for the mask? I guess maybe this is, unfortunately, being a therapist, you maybe psychoanalyze things too much, but right. I tend to see if I see a mask, because a constant filter.
What am I hiding?
What is this person hiding? Because a lot of times, if you always constantly put on that filter, because the way social media makes things happen there, it tends to cause the self-image to desire something that's not there.
Yes.
And it tends, if you're always looking at that picture and going, ooh, when you look in the mirror, like you said, I don't like what I see. So there's always this striving to be something that you're not.
Right. And then you're never happy with the person that, there's no way at that point to become happy, because at that point your goal becomes something that's not real.
Right.
And there's no way to ever be happy. And so we get into, there's this whole line of images that are going really heavily across TikTok and Instagram, and they're the hashtag Fitspo images, and they're the worst ones for this, and they can really decrease our mood and our self-esteem dramatically, because again, a lot of them are not realistic. They are angles, they are padding, they are they are heavily doctored photos that are supposed to be, if you only work out hard enough and you only diet well enough and you only eat so many calories, you'll look like me. And that's not healthy, because first of all of our bodies are built different. So what one person's fit does not look like somebody else's fit, because our bodies are just shaped different. And then second of all, it's not even, what they're showing you isn't even real. It's a doctored image. And so we're again making aspirational something that's not realistic. And it's scary. And so we see a lot of that with that Fitspo and a lot of that bodybuilding TikTok and things like that. A lot of it's very unrealistic.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think social media, fantasizes things, and it just pulls us in. And so this is where we have to, come back to that place of where's reality versus, fantasy.
Right.
Separating the two.
Well, and then there's also pieces of social media that have become very pro eating disorder, which is extremely, is like a therapist, that's so alarming for me. But they call themselves pro Anna or pro ED, and they're sometimes masked under the hashtag Thinspo or Thinspiration, and it normalizes the idea of these impossible beauty standards and eating habits that are disordered and dangerous. And so we go into it thinking, oh, Thinspiration, it's diet stuff, right? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like, oh, I want to diet, I need to lose 10 pounds, I need to use 20 pounds, and we look at this, and so we oh, look, this, and then we get into it, and we don't realize this. Meanwhile, the messages that are being targeted at us can often be really unhealthy. And so you'll see some of them, and I've even seen some pretty famous YouTubers and TikTokers and things like that put on like what I eat for a day to a point of, wow, like that's not healthy. Like we're talking severe under eating and severe malnutrition, and it's scary. It's scary that this is being presented to young people as inspiration.
Right.
So Tracy, let's talk about eating disorders.
Big topic. Very important topic. Yeah. I've had personal people that have had eating disorders that I've known. It's a very difficult disorder to overcome.
Yeah.
Very much so. So a lot of things that's hard to change, but there's treatments for it.
Most definitely.
I think that's the important people. There's a lot of famous people that we see that have gone through that. So I think that you're going to hit on that today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some famous people that have struggled with eating disorders. Yeah. But let's first kind of cover what eating disorders there are. Okay. So we've got anorexia, and anorexia is by far the most deadly eating disorder. It's when we restrict food intake to an unhealthy degree in order to lose weight. So many people with anorexia develop rituals around their food. They can be very preoccupied with food because they're not eating. It becomes very much the dominating part of their thoughts, and so they'll have rituals about what they have to do to eat, and about taking pieces of taking things apart, and it's very eating becomes an event. And it's very, very structured. There was a movie a few years ago, and I know you guys have probably never seen it, but it had Tracy Gold in it. And she was an actress from a TV show called Growing Pains. And she struggled with anorexia. And she ended up making a movie, I would say, in the mid-90s. That's why I said it was a made-for-TV movie in the mid-90s. I know none of you guys have seen it.
Not sounding familiar.
Oh.
But that's okay.
But it's an excellent movie. Like, I would love to be able to like show it up for one of our events here or something. Yeah. But it was like in this, she showed her like shredding lettuce and having this whole ritual about eating and having the lettuce be part of her meal and this whole thing. And I'm not going to get too much detail with it, but it was is showing that detail of her, and she's crying the whole time she's doing it, and she's got this very exact detail of how she's got to make this happen. So yeah, they can have very strict rituals. Sufferers can have heart and kidney problems and difficulties with temperature regulation. Their body weights can get down extremely, extremely low, and it can result in early onset osteoporosis, electrolyte balances, and even sudden death. So some famous people that have died from anorexia would be Karen Carpenter. She was part of a singing duo in the 70s and 80s, and she died very quickly at the very height of her fame. She had finally just got her weight stabilized, but she had done so much damage to her heart that she passed due to emitting cardiotoxicity. Basically, she damaged her heart from years and years and years of anorexia that it gave up. And then you had Christy Heinrich, who was preparing to compete in the Olympics, and somebody made a comment about her body type. And it led her to resort to anorexia to lose weight. So she was a Olympic athlete. I believe she was gymnast. And she eventually became so weak that she was unable to compete in the Olympics and was asked to leave her training. And so she left, and she died not long afterwards. And at the time she died, she'd actually managed to gain about 20 pounds back, but the damage to her body was so great, that she just couldn't survive. And my understanding is she was only about 60 pounds.
Oh, that's right.
Before she gained, I think she gained up to 80, but I think she was like 60 pounds at her lowest.
It's terrible.
So bulimia.
Yeah. So with bulimia, there's cycles of, binging food, and we're purging. So the binging and the purging, the in, the out, the constant, flux and flow of food. Sometimes that's through the use of vomiting, but then it's also sometimes through the use of diuretics and laxatives, so water pills and things like Pepto. What are some of the other ones that people will use? Imodium. Those are things that people
castor oil.
Castor oil. So I wanted to give you some specifics if you're trying to think of what I was, because those are big names of what I was using. So, but those are things that can really do some pretty significant damage. So they cause
very, very much so.
Yeah,
these absolutely, overusing laxatives can 100% kill you.
Yeah, exactly. So when I think of people who are constantly, vomiting and throwing up, they can cause, because there's so much acid that's coming up from the stomach with that constant coming up through the mouth. It can cause damage to your teeth and to your enamel, so it wears that away, so you can lose your teeth. It can cause a gastric rupture. So when we're talking gastric rupture, this is the esophagus that's leading the tube that's coming up from your stomach up to your throat. That can cause severe bleeding that happens. So that can cause that gastric rupture. It can cause esophageal tears. So there can be tears that happens in that esophageal, that tube that's coming from the stomach up to the throat, which are very, very painful, as well as the similar complications as our anorexia. So all the tooth damage that can happen, also the loss of teeth can happen. And at our age, as we get older, our teeth they don't come back. When you're little, your teeth grow back. So if you lose a tooth, hey, one's just going to be replaced. But as you get older, our teeth don't come back. And
you get paid.
Yeah, you get a tooth fairy when you're little. But now the teeth don't come back. So if you're looking at, having to get a partial, or if you're having to look at what are the implants. Oh my gosh, implants are so
$1,000
$1,000 in teeth. Yeah, so my dad got some implants a couple years ago, and I think he got 4 implants. It was like $2,500.
Wow,
yeah, it's outrageously expensive. So it also causes hair loss, losses of nails. They become very brittle. But I've actually seen people who've lost all their nails off the nail beds.
Yeah, they just fall. Yeah.
Yeah, and your skin becomes extremely dry, so which will age you, because as your skin becomes very dry, you also age.
Right.
So you get older looking than what you were. So sufferers of bulimia often are not as thin as those who suffer from anorexia, but can still face sudden death because of these things that I just mentioned.
Right. The stress alone of the constant vomiting and use of these heavy diuretics and laxatives, the stress it puts on the body alone can cause sudden cardiac arrest.
Right.
And there's been many cases of it in the past.
Sure.
So binge eating disorder is another one. And binge eating disorder is compulsive eating of large quantities of food. It's often tens of thousands of calories in a single sitting. So when we talk about anorexic and bulimia, in those cases, the goal of the the goal of the individual is often weight loss. Sometimes it can also be power related and feeling of loss of control, but ultimately what their reason that they say initially is because they want to lose weight, they want to be thinner, they want to be this, they want to be that, whereas binge eating disorder is more, it's a compulsion to eat past the point of being full. So sufferers really feel like they're unable to stop eating, and it's frequently items that are very heavy in comfort foods, very high carbohydrates, sweets can fall in there, but it can be anything, but most of the time you're talking like potato chips and ice cream and things like that. It can result in obesity and obesity related complications, as well as substance use and depression. For sufferers of it, it can feel like they're out of control and they have no control over it. And it's scary. It's really, all of these are very, very scary. And one of the other thing I wanted to talk about is there's also a lot of, we're starting to get into these individuals that are using, that are getting so into health stuff. I believe it's called orthorexia, and they're so into eating healthy that it goes to an extreme, and so they work out and they eat healthy to the point of obsession, to the unhealthy degrees, and I'm all about eating healthy and exercising and doing all that, but when it becomes to the point of punishing yourself if you missed a workout, and coming to the point of unhealthiness, then it can be very damaging.
Sure.
But I wanted to honorably mention.
Yeah, I can see where it goes. There's all the extremes, so too good, too bad. It can go both ways. There has to be a balance,
right?
And I think that's what you look for. And you can't go. You can have good and bad. So you want to try to find that good balance somewhere there.
So if you find yourself having any of these symptoms or realize you're not alone, there's about 30 million Americans suffer from eating disorders, and they're considered the deadliest of all mental health disorders. So in addition to the high risk of complications, including sudden death, there's also a really high correlation between eating disorders and suicide, and death by suicide. So you're not alone, and you don't have to do this battle alone. So let's talk, Tracy, about some real celebrities that have come out about their struggles with eating disorders, in case any of you guys want to take some inspiration from some celebrities that have who've been public about their battles and are working to overcome them.
Wow. I mean, we've got this list of 19 people sitting in front of us, and I'm sitting here going, when I first looked at this list, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize all these people, all these famous people even had these issues. And I'm like, this is amazing to me, because you don't realize who all has private struggles.
Yes.
They get presented in front of us. I'm like, wow. So I grew up, in the 70s and 80s, and so when I look at some of these people, Princess Diana sticks out to me first and foremost in this list. So she was very well revered, all across her own country, but our country. Of course she died in a very sudden accident, of course, but I don't know that people knew that she struggled with bulimia.
I think she talked about it. It was either in a book or an interview that came out, probably it was after her and Charles split up. So I want to say it was because she died in 97 and was August 97? So I want to say maybe 96 or somewhere around there. It came out that she had been struggling with it for several years.
Yeah, so it came out and well known after she came out, but I think it was more of a private thing.
Yes.
In her younger years, but these are those things that stay hidden for so long. But she finally came to that realization that, in her acknowledgement, that I think that acknowledgement also was knowing that I needed help.
Right.
So I think it's a good place to come to, that I can publicly speak about this, because within that public speaking, maybe that public speaking will help other people too, because she was a very influential person. I think even today,
yes,
she still has an influence that goes around this world.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of people on this list that are pretty influential.
Yeah.
So, like, let's start with the top, like Laura Prepon. Laura Prepon, you might be familiar from her. She was Donna in that 70s show, and she also played in Orange is the New Black. And according to this, she battled bulimia for a decade before finally getting free of it. And so she's been in recovery for a while now. Mary Kate Ashley Olsen has been in treatment previously for anorexia. Demi Lovato has publicly admitted that they binge, and they had previously sought treatment for bulimia.
Nice.
Portia de Rossi wrote a book about her eating disorder, stating that she once put herself on a diet of 300 calories a day.
I can't imagine existing on that. I would starve. I'm hungry all the time anyway.
300 calories a day is like nothing. Mm-hmm. Like that's
a Pop-Tart has 50 or 150 calories in it. So,
right.
A bowl of cereal typically 170 calories in it. So,
you couldn't even eat 2 bowls of cereal.
Yeah, no. Well, 170 calories without the milk. So you add the milk, and you already are at 320 calories. So you can't even have the milk. Yeah. So, yeah. And I'm quoting Raisin Bran Crunch. Who eats Raisin Bran Crunch? In our house, a lot. But
I just keep thinking that's not even 2 protein shakes.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So Jerry Halliwell, you may know her as Ginger Spice from the Spice Girls, has been very open about her struggles with bulimia. Candace Cameron Bure battled with bulimia after Full House ended. She battled with it for a few years. Kesha went into an eating disorder recovery program in 2014. Hilary Duff struggled with restrictive eating while she was in Lizzie McGuire back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Zayn Malik from One Direction struggled with an eating disorder and is open about the toll it took on his mind and his body. Alanis Morissette opened up in her documentary about her struggles with bulimia throughout her teens and 20s. So at the time that she was her most famous, and through her teen years when she was famous up in Canada as a pop star, and then when she became a star up here in down here in the United States, she all through that time, and when I watched her documentary, one of the things she talked about is somebody made a statement about her weight, and she was 16 when she was a star up in Canada, and I may be wrong on the time, like I'm just recalling from the documentary that I watched not too long ago. She's talking about it, and it was just the way that it affected her and all the pressure she had to lose weight and be thin. It just caused her to really struggle with bulimia for all of that time. So when we see her and the time that she released that first album, like that was the height of it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So Zoe Kravitz struggled with an eating disorder since she was 13. Shawn Johnson states that her first time on Dancing with the Stars made her start disordered eating patterns as a result because she felt bad about herself. She lost her body confidence. Russell Brand, he's very open about his long-standing struggles with an eating disorder and has struggled since he was a teen. What do we tell people?
Well, I think if people, know that they have an eating disorder, I think it's being open to knowing that they can reach out for assistance. If you think you or someone you know has an eating disorder, please have them contact Student Wellbeing. In addition to individual counseling, we have a body image group, which is a great resource for people because being able to talk amongst your peers and being able to interact with others who are dealing with the same similar situations, I think is really a great place to be able to talk about what you're experiencing. Being able to have your peers and share with them is a good way to find support. And so if you need to talk with an individual counselor, we're here, but we also have that group to be able to join in with. So there's also an online resource called Body You, where you can take a short quiz that will help you determine if you do have a disordered eating habits. So I would encourage you also to look at that as a resource too. So check that out.
Well, thank you guys for joining us today, and I hope to see you next week. Thanks. For more information about mental health and wellness, contact Student Wellbeing at 204 Norwood Hall. And you can also give us a call at 573-341-4211.
The song Happy Days is brought to us by music from www.free-stock-music.com. You can also add and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook using our handle @S&T Wellbeing.